Welcome to Call Your Hits, a Storm Riders Airsoft podcast. Thanks for joining us, everyone. Today, I've got Kirby in the studio with me, and we're going to be doing a bit of a Red Row 3 recap. So in the last episode, I had the opportunity to talk to many of the people who are involved in the command staff organization of the Red Road, so on the Rust 4 and NATO side. But what I thought we would do today is dive more into sort of our experience with some, well, let's not say new, but definitely unique experiences, let's call it, as well as sort of like debrief a bit on the preparation that we had done and the things that we thought would be issues that maybe were or were not issues, and other things that we did prepare for and how that worked out, and sort of all things in between, and also talk a little bit as well about night vision, because this was really the first time that Kirby and I had used night vision in the context of Airsoft. So that was a unique experience, and we had no real prep for it. We just sort of got dropped into it. So we'll talk about that and sort of how that met our expectations and sort of what we took away from it. So Kirby, thanks for being here. Also, thanks for like agreeing to go on this trip in the first place. I think it was definitely
Yeah,
it was a
no,
trip.
no, it was fantastic. I know. I mean, you were the big push to get us to go, and it was a real shame that only myself and you were able to get out from Newfoundland. There's some logistics for a lot of people, but no,
Yeah.
it was a great experience, especially since I didn't get to indulge in American Milsim with you guys the year prior. So
Yeah, and for people who maybe are listening to this and have not traveled for airsoft before, I've had the good fortune of being able to do that a few times now, and I know many people in the Discord have also done that, and it's actually not that complicated. It can definitely seem very intimidating because like I'm going to take my replicas on a plane, and like we know that firearms and planes don't sort of get along, but at the same time, like they're not firearms, they are just toys, and when they put them through a scanner and they have a bunch of springs and gears inside of them, they can clearly tell that it's not, it looks like a real gun but it's not. And so I was distinctly remember like we were in the Ottawa airport and the guy had like the case open and there's like the three replicas in there, like yours, mine, and John's, and the people behind you, I think, said something like, what does he need all those guns for?
oh my
But
gosh,
meanwhile,
that
the
was
guy was like, "Oh yeah, what's this? It's an M4. I get on the plane. It doesn't matter, right? Like
yeah,
he doesn't
yeah.
care."
And it was
Yeah,
really funny how from like don't get me wrong, like from airport to airport, it was a different experience. Like we had the situation where we got sent back to Halifax due to weather,
yeah,
and not so enjoyable of an experience. But otherwise, it's
that's
mostly
true.
painless. It was mostly painless.
Yeah. So if you're listening to this and you're like, oh, maybe I want to travel, no, for airsoft, like I would certainly recommend that if
Hmm.
you're able to do so. I mean, there's a lot of different ways. I mean, you can just pay for it, but there's points. There's a bit. Maybe you're having like a work trip and you can tack on an extra day and like check an airsoft field, or like there's a lot of ways that you can sort of hack around that kind of stuff. And it's totally worth it because I think Kirby, you experienced this maybe not for the first time, but like we've been playing airsoft at frontline for so long, and then I know you played airsoft in Alberta and it was sort of
Hmm.
different, but then you go to a big event somewhere else and that changes your perspective of what your local airsoft scene looks like, right?
Oh my gosh! Like when that's like when I mean I remember after the event when we were on our way back to the airport, and like when we were in the airport, and I remember even saying to you, I was like, "Gosh, I know how you and Johnny feel after you guys went to Iron Horse." Because like while yes, I've played in Alberta at rather large events, they were still nothing like what Red Roads was for me at least to experience. So that's why I said to you, coming back to Newfoundland, I was like, "Gosh, airsoft is going to be so different."
Yeah. And it's like I told you at the time, and I told Johnny, and Johnny and I had this conversation in 2024, but it's like, it's so much easier,
Yeah.
right? Like when you think about like the conditions that you're in, and we'll talk about that, but just even the idea of like you're out there for an extended period of time for, 10, 12 hours. I can't remember exactly how long we were out for, maybe like 10 hours.
Mhm.
And then you go back to like a weekend skirmish, which is like 15-minute games on like a field that's like 100 meters wide by like 200 meters long, if that. like it changes sort of that perspective and the dynamic, because you don't there's not that endurance aspect either of like I'm going to be out here for a while or what have you, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So, I mean, that's a good segue into, we knew what we were getting into in terms of Red Road. Well, certainly not in terms of the weather. I think that was a surprise for basically everybody. Although the command guys in last week's episode or the week before, they were very much still of the mind of, oh no, you should have expected that. And I was like, I'm not quite sure. I don't necessarily agree. But regardless, we sort of knew that it was at least going to not be very warm. We knew that going into it. And we knew that we'd be on the go, as we say in Newfoundland, like we would be sort of on the field and like doing stuff, being active for extended periods. Like my objective was to make sure that we spend as little time sitting around in our
Mhm.
CP as possible, because like if we want to sit around and just like talk about airsoft, we could do that anytime. So if we're going to this event, like we want to be out as much as possible. And as a consequence of that, I think we prepared pretty well for the cold. Do you want to talk a little bit about sort of what you did in terms of what your setup was like for layering and cold? And I can talk about mine a little bit too.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so I know that we were really lucky leading up to the event. Of course, we had some local guys in the area who were able to kind of give us a little bit of hints in terms of what to expect from the weather. The sort of little I guess I call it a benefit, but a little bit of benefit I had going into this is that like I have low blood pressure naturally, so like my fingers and toes, like literally as I speak right now, are just like they're like blocks of ice. So it's kind of normal for me. Now, like obviously, I still wanted to be prepared. So I had all my thermal layers. I did have to order a jacket, which I ordered one on Amazon, which has kind of become like part of my airsoft kit now. Like I was wearing it constantly leading up to the event. I just wore it last weekend during a private event that we held at a local field. It's been offering a lot of comfort, and it does offer like that really good layer of warmth for me. My biggest concern, to be honest, was just the fingers and the toes, because I was like, well, if my fingers get too cold to the point to where I can't even like change a mag or pull a trigger, like that's going to be problematic.
Yeah.
So for me, I just ended up doubling up on gloves, and then plus putting the hand warmers inside my gloves as well. And I never had any real issues. And I did bring some extra pairs as well, which was really beneficial because I had my giant poncho, which was definitely a really good call to bring the poncho because that saved my clothing 100%. But it obviously didn't protect my hands. So
Hmm.
getting to go back to the CP to swap to some fresh, warm, or at least dry gloves was like one of the best feelings in the world during the event. But for me, like I'm a bit of an over prepper anyway. So like I mean, I was doubled up on socks. Plus, I brought spares.
Hmm.
I mean, between me and you, we had so many hand and toe warmers. Which, to be
Yeah.
honest, I found that mine didn't really work anyway.
Yeah,
So
that was a big learning moment for me,
yeah.
because we had bought so many. Like I had hit up Costco here in St. John's before going, and I bought a box of like 40 pairs or something for like $20. So it's just like, but I figured like, they say on them like don't put them next to you directly against your skin, because they don't
Mm,
get very hot, because they can get very hot and stuff. And even here, like I can't get them hot enough. Like I had some on the other day because our weather has been sort of whatever, and I was out doing some yard work, and I'm like, I'm gonna wear hand warmers, my gloves, because my hands get really cold, and like they were not getting super hot. Like it was some warmth for
mm,
sure, but definitely not to the point of getting your hands really really sweaty. And certainly like once the freezing rain started in Renfrew and in Ontario and stuff, like
mhm.
they weren't fight. I know some of the guys had some of them stuck to their map gas tanks to try and keep the tanks warmer, and that really wasn't working. The
Yeah.
ones in the boots were also not working very well. Like it was just not, relying on those would definitely have been a mistake, I guess, is where
Mhm.
I'm going with that, right?
Yeah, no, I'd agree fully. And like one of the benefits I also had going for me in comparison, like, and this is just difference between our kits, is that I still wear a plate carrier. So for
Yeah.
me, I did have that extra layer over my core as well. So I think that really, helped benefit me there. Because like to be honest, like I never really ran into issues with the cold. I mean, like we all had semi issues at the end of the night when we were like, wow, this is just silly. Like everything's freezing solid.
Yeah,
But in terms of like, like there was like for me there was no need to like tap out of the event because I was cold or wet
agree.
or anything like that. One thing I was also a little impressed by, and I know this is one thing that we had prepped for very heavily, was batteries.
Yeah.
We had lipos out the yin yang. I had radio batteries out the yin yang. So did you. Um, Batteries for our headsets, and I don't think either one of us went through a single battery for anything.
No, and as I thought about this more sort of later on, and I really never chatted about this, but the reality is like objectively, from just a pure temperature perspective, it actually wasn't that cold, right? It
No.
was only around 0 degrees or -1,
Yeah.
right? So the batteries that we were using that were largely shielded from the things that made us as humans cold, so the
Mm-hmm.
wetness and the wind, they were just experiencing sort of ambient temperature, which wasn't too cold. As opposed to us, again, who were feeling that sort of like, -5, -7 sort of, wind chill, everything factored in.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that probably played a big part in it because if it had been really cold, which is sort of where my thinking was, and same as you, like we bought extra batteries when we got up there for our replicas, and I had so many spare batteries and everything for like the headset and the radio, like you were saying, and never actually changed it. I think I changed my AEG battery once, but only as a precaution. Like it wasn't because my replica was beeping or telling me I needed to change it. So really for that duration, that was pretty stellar.
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
am on my end. I was wearing, and for those of you who are on the Discord will have seen it. My wife had made me a half cloak out of an old USGI wool blanket. And wool is amazing because it does not lose its ability to keep you warm even when it gets wet, which was super useful. So one of the things that you can do to avoid getting wet and cold is what Kirby did, which is you wear like an impermeable or like a waterproof sort of overlayer, which prevents you from getting wet. Mission success. It works fine.
Mhm.
For me, I didn't really want to do that because I didn't want to wear a poncho. I really wanted to have like a sort of cape with an open front, which, and a hood, which properly is a cloak, right? And so I had seen this guy on on YouTube that had, I think Galen actually shared it on the Discord, and it was a really cool setup. I was like, I want something similar. I don't want to spend $1 million on fabrics and stuff. Let's see what I have. I have this wool blanket. Let's repurpose it. And that was basically, she took a poncho pattern and then just opened up the front and added like a strap with a buckle so that I could tighten it if I wanted to or keep it pretty loose. And so in its standard configuration, let's call it, the cloak is basically in line with the shoulder straps on my belt. So really, it doesn't interfere with like reloading mags or accessing my kit, etc. It can get a little tangly. It happened one time, and it happened as well once at Frontline running that kit. If
Mhm.
you get in a piece of cover and it's really small and you're trying to tuck down, then stuff can get a little weird. But overall, like at Red Road, I had no issue with mobility,
Mhm.
but the warmth factor was huge. Now it gets heavy because the wool absorbs all of this moisture. But you just hit the gym and you're all good. You don't care about the weight. But the warmth, right? And that was amazing. That definitely made a huge difference. I love that piece of kit, and it's gonna be a standard part of my like colder weather gear, just by virtue of the fact that it's so like it's very like adaptable, you flexible. You can completely remove it off of your shoulders and just run it like a cape, or you can have it over your shoulders. You can bundle yourself up into it if you start to get cold. So that was really great, and then everything else I did sort of similar to what Kirby's been talking about, which is just good Canadian wilderness outdoor, like in the winter type stuff. You double up on everything, right? You double up on your socks. Like I had technical moisture wicking socks with wool socks on the outside of that, inside of my boots. I did normally, my plan was to use trail runners, which is what I always use playing Airsoft. But because there was snow on the ground, I'm like, I can't do that. My feet are legit going to fall off if I do that. I need an insulated boot. So I went out and I bought a pair of Helly Hansen boots on recommendations from Jack and Jason, and that was perfect. And then everything else was just layer. I merino base layer on my legs, merino base layer on my chest, technical layers between that. and then my overclothing, so like my regular trousers, my regular combat shirt, and then just like waffle layers underneath, just to keep all the warmth in, and then a
Mm-hmm.
toque on your head, right, or a beanie, stocking cap, whatever you want to call it, on your head underneath your helmet, and you're off to the races. I want to mention the helmet though, because that was a big learning for me. Whatever the system, retention system in my helmet, it's a typical like fast helmet with the adjustment on the back. That's not it. I
Yeah.
need something new. It was giving me a headache, and not just because we were wearing the nods. It's something I've noticed in the past before, and I thought maybe it's because it's too tight or it's putting pressure or whatever. And yeah, so I was like, okay, whatever. I got some new pads for it, and I was wearing the nods that I have here at home, out walking the dog at night the other night, and I was just wearing them just for fun, and I could feel the pressure even though I
Mm.
had new pads. I'm like, okay, something's got the helmet's got to change. So that's one piece, and I'd never really worn my helmet for such an extended period that I would notice it like that before. And yeah, that was something for me to consider. But other than that, like I mean, in terms of gear, super comfortable. Like that's not the reason that I would have stopped playing. Even if like later on we had decided, we kept going or whatever, I don't think my gear or coldness would have factored into that decision personally.
No, no, I think we did prepare really well. And I mean, like the reality is like, like me, you, and Johnny, like we had spent so much time. Like we met twice at
Yeah.
my office to prepare like our gear and talk about stuff. We had our group chat going, everything. So like, I mean, the reality is like we over prepared, but again, like that's always better to over prepare anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. Um, and then in terms of other kit, I mean, my 203 did not get used
Mm.
because the cold made the shells not actually do anything. I picked up 2 extra shells and some chalk rounds from Flamingo, which was so awesome meeting those guys in person and
Yeah,
chatting, shooting the shit, smoking and joking, as they say. Um, but ultimately, like the 203 did not like was not usable in any capacity, so I took it off my replica completely.
yeah, yeah.
Um,
Which is a shame because I mean we were in a lot of opportunities where that could have been so
yeah,
beneficial.
especially that our last engagement when we
Oh my,
basically just got schwacked by their vehicle. But if I had a 203, I could have put a round or
yeah,
two in the side of the vehicle and disabled it. But that was just not
yeah.
just not in the cards because of the cold. Um, and so that was it. And then I had to add on, which I hadn't considered, but I had to add on an IR laser
Mm.
for the night vision. So I had just assumed I could just use my red dot sight as normal, etc. And you kind of can if you have a real red dot that can get dim enough that it doesn't blow out your nods, which I do.
Hmm.
But you also don't necessarily know, like unless you're really dialed in, like if your BBs are going to the right place and all this kind of stuff. So Joe was kind enough to suggest that I pick up an IR laser, which is something that I did.
Hmm.
And I know you had one on your replica as well. It was a last minute addition, but definitely worthwhile. And we can talk about it when we talk about nods later on. And then aside from that, like it was just the regular kit. I had my backpack on the entire time. And in retrospect, I don't know if I really needed it. I never actually took a knee and took my pack off and like searched through my pack. It was nice to have, but a couple extra frags in there, and that was about it.
Yeah, and that was the thing. Like, one of the things like, I remember after Silent Resolve was I was committed to not carrying my whole pack because my back was so destroyed after Silent Resolve. I was like, I'm not doing this. So I picked
Mm,
up like that little tiny one that mollies on to the back of my vest. And that just gives me options. Like when I go to the field, like I know the reality is like, can I reach in the bag? No, but like I'm also like I used to carry mags on my back, as you know, and like I always just run like a buddy system. Like the reality is
yeah,
I'm always going to be near somebody who can access my back, and so for me, like I was able to carry some of the extra frags for us in the pack, some
yeah.
extra loaded mags, so that way if we were out there for a while, we wouldn't have to go back to CP. And for me, I don't notice that weight, and now again, someone else has to access it, which that adds a step. But usually in these events, so you're always near people anyway.
Yeah, and yeah, you're totally right. If you're and especially for these events, like you had to be with your team, right?
Hmm.
That was part of the rules.
Yep.
Whether people read that or not is a different story. But I digress. We were certainly with each other the entire time.
Yes.
So if you had needed something from the pack, even if you were dead and it was like you needed something important, like I don't know, medication or whatever, like
Hmm.
someone is there to help you. So that was not so much of a factor. I think one of the things that I really learned that I need to fix absolutely is my radio setup.
Mhm.
I had my one radio that I was using to talk to both the squad and our platoon lead, and I can't do that again because I watched some of the footage and I'm just struggling, basically not struggling, but maybe a strong word, but I'm constantly having to switch channels, right, on my radios because I'm listening to both, right? That's what dual watch is all about, but I can only reply on one. So if I need to reply, I got to switch it over.
Yeah.
That's not the move. So especially understanding that I had my digital radio, but we didn't end up using that because the command stuff didn't get figured out. But anyways, I was on regular channels. So I was always switching back and forth. So in future, I would just carry two radios and two speaker mics or a speaker mic. What I did at Iron Horse, which I think I'm keen to replicate, is my platoon radio on a speaker mic and then my squad radio on an earpiece, because
Mm.
that way, if there's anyone around me, they can hear the stuff that platoon is saying. Which limits or reduces the amount of stuff that I have to repeat because other people around me can hear it.
Yeah.
So that's something I'm going to fix. I mean, it's an easy fix. It's just get another headset, get another radio, get another headset, and then just figure out a way to carry both of them. Right?
Yeah, and actually, we just tested something at a private game recently because Fong has a new setup.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah. He's got the PTT with the two buttons, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
and
But he runs two radios.
yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's one thing that I looked at. I know some of the people in Discord recommended something like that, but it's very expensive compared to just get an earpiece for your second radio, right? Well, I mean, it's very expensive compared to like the $10 or $12 is going to cost to get the earpiece, right?
That you be very you'll we'll chat, but that dual system is a lot cheaper than you might think.
All right, fair enough. So we'll have a chat. But regardless,
Yeah.
so that's something that needs to be looked at for sure.
Yeah.
And then like aside from that, I had no real issues with the kit.
Mhm.
Like we had those really good anti-fog wipes that you had brought. They're like the fog X, like the X fog or whatever they're called, or fog tech, whatever, similar kind of stuff to that.
Yeah.
No issues with fogging. And we were very fortunate, both of us, that the NVG mount for the nods fit with our helmet. Yours was a little tighter than mine, but
Yeah.
ultimately they both fit the form factor, which can sometimes be dicey with airsoft helmets.
Yeah.
So in that respect, I think our kits were pretty much squared away, except for my thing that needed, and like frag pockets. I don't
Wow.
really. I had the big frags, the tag 67, so they're like shaped like I guess they're shaped like real frag grenades. Presumably, I've never seen a real frag grenade, but I expect that that's what they're shaped like. And so I don't really have anywhere on my kit that's dedicated for that. So I ended up using
Mhm.
like a GP pouch for like to carry two of them, but I had six. So I ended up carrying one in my dump pouch, which was the first one I would throw, and then I would take one out of my GP pouch and then put it back in my dump pouch, because the advantage of these frag grenades is that they were pyro, so you don't have to recover them, which is awesome. You can just throw it and just yeet it and forget it, right?
Oh,
That
yeah.
was
Like,
awesome. And you had a really good experience with pyro at this event because you won some pyro too during the initial draw.
yeah. So they did a draw for just straight up pyro and some flamingo products as well before the event because they were like, hey, you know what? We have this stuff. We may as well raffle it now, so that way you guys can use it during the game,
Yeah.
which I thought was a great idea, by the way. So I never, because I never purchased any tag-ins, and I kind of regretted it after. I mean, we were talking about it. I was like, oh, maybe I should have. And then I ended up winning two during the raffle anyway, which was so cool. And yeah, I mean, first off, 100%. Am I going to be running around Newfoundland at future events with tag-ins? Yes, absolutely. Take my money.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, no. I mean, I had probably one of the coolest ever experiences in terms of like just getting to throw a frag and absolutely gonna just be honest, dumpstering two people with it was the
Yes.
best feeling in the world for myself and Zippy, who gave me, because he, again, I carried my stuff in my pack, and I'm like, pass me that tag in and cover me, and just the hail of BBs that are getting fired, and it's just a like almost baseball throw, and it actually landed on the guy. So he just rolled and covered his ears because he knew like there's nothing he could do, And I went over and I actually apologized after because like I couldn't see him when I chucked it, and I was like, I am so sorry that I hit you with it. But everyone was really good about it.
Yeah, he had a really positive experience
Yeah.
overall, right? Like
Yeah. Oh yeah.
made his day in a sort of way, right?
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. So like the pyro and stuff, that's one thing that we're sort of having used it a bit more a few times.
Mm,
The tags that we were throwing were like the tag 67s, which are the lower power formula or whatever, and you can get them on Black Blitz and stuff like that. And they're actually like reasonable, like compared to some of the tags we were throwing in the States that were very, very loud and very powerful. These ones are a bit more subdued, but it's still a great pop. It's still like, but they're super safe. And so having used those, I was like, I would feel comfortable using those back home. So that's one
hmm.
big change that we're making in the Airsoft League that we're going to run next year in our events, is that that kind of stuff is going to be permitted. So that's a bit of an aside, but yeah. So we got a chance to throw those. A little bit of a challenge not knowing the form factor beforehand, so how it's going to fit on your kit. But I think we
Hmm.
made it work regardless.
Yeah.
Um, so that was pretty cool. Again, no real lessons learned here other than a couple of times I thought about throwing them and didn't, and I just should have, because I ended up going back with, I think I have 2 or 3 left over,
Right.
which is not a bad thing. They're going to get used, but yeah, it would be nicer to throw them and maybe get someone out with them. I don't know, right?
Yeah. Well, I just even like just like I mean, I remember I had one in my hand and I didn't throw it because I just threatened. And I think there was an NPC or something
Yes.
that was in
Yeah,
the hut,
yeah, yeah.
and because we thought it was the enemy team, and we're like, so we get to the door and we're like, knock knock, and he's like, get away from the hut, and we're like, oh, okay, so it's not the enemy forces. And I'm like, well, if you don't come out of this building, I'm throwing the frag in, and he's like, no, you're not. I'm like, brother, I'm counting to 10, and he's like, you're not gonna throw it. And anyway, I was like, all right, F it, 2, and then he's like, I'm so sorry, and he opens the door, and I was a little upset because I was like, I really wanted to throw it in the building, but
That's the building we should have searched for the equipment.
don't.
Yeah, yeah.
We're not
Anyways,
talking about it.
moving along. So yeah, so we in terms of preparation, like for the kit for our gear,
Yeah.
I think everything else is exactly what we needed.
Mm-hmm.
I want to talk a little bit about lessons learned from a tactical standpoint now.
Mm-hmm.
So let's dissect basically, like we did, just for clarity, like we basically did 4 large sorties during the
Mm-hmm.
game. We did 2 in the daytime, and then we had 2 in the evening/night. So looking at the first 2, I feel like those are the ones where we had the most sort of control over what we were doing and how we were doing it. Not to say that later on we lost control, but the dark made it a lot more complicated.
Mm-hmm.
And like I was managing night vision, you were managing night vision, like that was a whole thing, and that was a big focus. So I want to talk about the first 2. So strategically, what were some of the things that surprised you about how those first 2 sorties went, like during the day, compared to what you might have been expecting otherwise?
Yeah. So the first one I'll start with. I expected the first one for us to get into contact a lot faster than we did.
Mm-hmm.
But we also went into the first one at half strength
Yeah,
because we were missing. Well, I say half strength, but we were missing 4 members of
yeah,
our section, which was tough. And I think that we were able to, do what we could with only half a section present. I thought we were going to be able to hold that position for a lot longer than we did. I thought we were going to actually spend, because we were on what we call King Slope, and I thought we were going to be sitting up there for at least a few hours.
mm-hmm.
Um, just kind of throwing, as the enemy would come up, we throw them off the hill, right? That was the entire concept. And obviously, there was a bit of a lack of communication with command where we ended up losing a portion of the field. We literally got encircled like
Yeah,
360 degrees, and our commander was basically like, yeah, I mean, you guys are going to die, but, take as many with you as you can. And we're like,
yeah,
sounds good,
yeah,
Chief. And we did that. And like, so the thing is for me, I was like, you know what? Like, looking at it, when we walked off, I was a little bit like, wow, we did not hold that anywhere near as long as we should have. I was in my mind, I was a little disappointed.
Mhm.
But then I looked at it from a reality standpoint, and I was like, okay, we were at half strength. The enemy force that encircled us was at least four times our size.
Well, it turns out
Actually,
it was like 80% of the enemy forces,
there you go, right?
right? So it's like got close on like 60 players.
Yeah, so we got to, really we got to be a little bit of a needle in their side for about a half hour to 45 minutes while we were in contact,
Yeah.
which obviously caused a really big distraction, our guys to regroup and stuff like that. So I thought that, we went into it, the initial getting to our position, I think, was done relatively well because we had obviously planned for it the day before. We were on site setting up our camp and kind of talking about the path we were going to take.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think that that portion went well. We just ran into some bad luck in terms of only going into it at half strength and stuff like that. But there was one point where I got I think my because we kind of had to my I took a section and we kind of broke off from you to kind of go chase down a very small like a recon team that we were in contact with. And I feel like if I had my time back, I think looking at it now, I think that we wasted too much time trying to track down that recon team, and we should have just held our position and just let one of like they couldn't go overly far without running into our CP anyway.
Yeah.
So I feel like we almost should have just stayed where we were, held really tight, and just let them go do their thing, and probably just end up getting wiped by our command HQ anyway.
Yeah. I think in that situation, one of the things I noticed is like I did not have a good situational awareness. Like
Mhm.
I didn't know exactly where you were or which
Mhm.
direction you were looking at. And so like in my mind, I'm like, okay, well, Kirby's got it. So whatever he wants to do, just go ahead and do that because I don't have the sight line. And I think that's one piece for me. Like, I think through communication, I would have liked to get a better sense of like where you were and where the enemy was that you were looking at in order to make that decision a bit more clearly around like, do we want you going after these guys or do we not? Now, in the
Mhm.
moment, it all made sense, right? In the moment, you're like, hey, I got four guys there. We think we have a balloon out there because that was a whole thing with Seb. Where he thinks he sees a balloon and we don't know what color their balloons are. So we want to get that intel. So we're
Mhm.
managing that and you're managing that and I'm sort of trusting you to do that, which no issue with, right? But
Mhm.
in retrospect, I'm like, I didn't have enough information to give you that trust because I should have been thinking about, okay, but like, is that a fight that we need to fight? Or is it better for us to just let those guys bypass us to do whatever? And they're going to hit, like you said, they're going to hit the CP anyway. So like, who cares? Right? Like they're
Mhm.
going to come up against like 20, 30, 40 dudes, presumably who are all sitting in CP just waiting to schwack these guys. So who cares? And do I think that it would have made a difference? Not especially, because ultimately, what ended up happening, you decided to break that contact, come back to us, link up with us, and then suddenly, like 40 enemy are rushing our position and curb stomping us. So, like, realistically, whether you were there for a little longer or not, ultimately didn't really change the outcome.
Yeah.
Um, but I like that situational awareness piece was definitely a big eye opener for me. Like, it's like I need to understand the battlefield situation a bit more so I can ideally make a more informed decision. The other challenge that I had is because we were lower strength and also because of the nature of the kind of player that I am, like I was fighting a lot and I kept reminding myself that hey, I should not be doing this right now. Like other people, like it's not that other people should be cannon fodder for me. It's not that I can't engage, but other people should be taking the risk before I do. Once we got encircled, it really didn't matter. Like it was like whatever. We are just trying to survive, having the best time of our life.
Yeah.
But even before that, like I like watching some of the video, the raw video. Like when the game starts, like I even say out loud, it's like I should not be up front. And 10 minutes later, I'm up front. I'm up front running with you, right? Getting in position. It's like you need to that's something you need to fix like you always because I don't want to be the tip of the spear because I have all the information, I have command, I have all this kind of stuff. I need other people to be doing, and it's not a natural sort of reflex for me because I tend to be wanting to be upfront, right?
Mhm.
So yes, but ultimately I think That was the first sortie was definitely an education, but I mean, I'm like you. I was like, "Ah, it's too bad that we got overrun. But then learning about it in retrospect, that hey, we held them there for an hour, as and especially considering that there's like 60 of them there, that was pretty all right. I think we did
Yeah.
okay. And like they were the Russian conscripts, so they were healing themselves and getting back in the game.
Yes, which was also its own challenge, of course, because like in my mind, I'm going, okay, there's one down, okay, there's two down, but then the
Yeah.
reality is that that one who I'm like, okay, I don't have to worry about him anymore. He's tourniqueted. I'm like, what?
Yeah, it's like
So
it's you're fighting 8 guys basically. And if they
yeah,
have a medic on top, then it's it's yeah. I
yeah,
shot a lot of guys.
yeah, yeah.
I
So
think we both did. Everyone in it, I mean, Alex was on the machine gun and he was just like laying hate and
hmm
just shooting into that village. And you know that's the best you can do. And then eventually, we get overrun at the top of Kingman Slopes, basically, which ultimately was kind of not necessarily our plan, but that was kind of what the play was let's
yeah,
get on top of Kingman Slopes. We're going to shoot down this defilade and just shoot as many as we can until eventually they overrun us or they get too tired or what have you, and we executed on that. Just we
hmm
were short like 3 players.
yeah,
And then when we did the second sortie, I think we're at full strength. Then
yes,
we're all back together, and that was a different type. It was a lot more movement. So where the first time we had the static position more or less, the second time we're like, okay, well we want to navigate through this terrain and then go back, try and get back to the position we were at and take out
hmm
the enemy who was sort of on the eastern side. And that was interesting too. You basically we decided to move in like a basically like a T formation, so to have one of the fire teams in the sections led by you,
hmm
basically going in a vertical line in the direction of travel, and then have the second reserve section sort of in a perpendicular line, perpendicular to the direction of travel. So we're basically line abreast. And the idea was that if you guys took contact, you could either break left or right, and then the reserve element, could just move and sort of either go either side to provide more support on, you know, uh, in the direction that would be more useful to deal with the contact.
hmm
Um, as far as I'm aware, like you had never done that specifically before, right?
No, not that. No.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
you were the point man on that. What was that experience like for you? Like what were you thinking about it, like going into it?
Yeah, so it was interesting because I feel like I feel like kind of from that point I feel like I played a lot of point during this event, which
Mm-hmm.
is very different from my role here because I typically run a DMR. So for me, I'm typically always in the back. So getting to be point was kind of like cool. Like this is something I don't ever get to do, but I thoroughly enjoyed it just because there was a sense of I find that I'm one of the things I would say about myself is that I am a very verbal person. So I will yell this I will communicate with whoever's behind me and just I'm always like, okay, you know what, like I'm in the front, I just want to move. And that worked for my play style in the sense because of course during this patrol, which I think by the way was amazing teamwork throughout that
Yeah,
patrol. I thought we did
I would agree.
phenomenal, especially for people who don't regularly play together ever. I thought it
Yeah,
was
yeah,
excellent.
quite literally. Yeah,
So yeah, no, we did a great movement. We ended up kind of coming in. I think it was behind the airborne guys, and
yeah,
they were kind of waving to us that there were contacts circling our CP. So we actually had a plan to go back to Kingsman Slope, and we actually ended up detouring to go and get rid of that patrol that was circling. And so we did just that. We ended up getting into contact. My team did basically a quick hold, laid a lot of fire to put down the rust for their heads. I know you ended up taking a team, and I think you guys broke left, wide left, to kind of try and get an angle to lay down fire from the left side, which ended up working great. And there was just a lot of really good communication, like shooting and moving, shooting and moving. Like again, like just the bounding movement that happened during that patrol was phenomenal. And we actually never took a single casualty, and we ended up wiping a 6-man patrol, which was great. I know your squad, your section ended up taking out 3 guys.
Yeah.
I ended up fragging two, and then Zippy ended up finding a dude who was basically laying in a bush, just kind of waiting for us to walk by. And so there was really really good work. I think we all, and obviously myself included, we all got really excited with how well we executed it, to where we kind of let our security down. I know
Hmm.
you. There was a point where you were like, guys, like security, like let's go, which was the right call, obviously, because we didn't know what was out there, and obviously we ended up not having further contact at that moment.
Yeah.
But it was still like always be on your toes thing, because there was this moment where I feel like we were so hyped and we were kind of chatting with the squad that we engaged and eliminated, that we all did kind of have a little bit lacking of security. But no, I think that I personally, looking at that engagement, at least from my team's perspective, with Seb and Jack and Zippy, like I don't think we could have executed from our side really any better than we did. And I mean, I've seen some of your footage, of course, from your section. I thought you guys did phenomenal as well.
Yeah, I think I would agree. Like again, it's not that I would agree. I do agree. Like I think that we, for people who don't really play
Mm,
together, I think the difference and the reason why we were able to work so well is strictly down to how much we communicated with each other
mhm,
around like I would say to Joe like, oh, this is what we're doing, or she'd say, okay, well, I'm going here, I'm going to do that, or Colin would communicate, or we would all talk to each other in a clear way so that we knew what we were going to do. And that's, even with, to your point, like Seb, it's like his very first sort of airsoft event like this. And, he's communicating, he's talking, like, and with Alex and Aiden, like, and Chris, who joined us as well from Chris was a friend of Hagen's, I think. Like, we were just talking and talking and talking
mhm,
and communicating, passing information along, and that really helped make sure that we were doing sort of the best thing possible in any given moment. And that shone through because, like you said, we didn't take any casualties. We cleared that contact. The only sort of even better, if for me, is that I got really turned around
mhm,
because in my mind, our direction of travel was not the direction of travel. So
mhm,
in my mind, when we set out from the CP, we were going like northeast, and then we took contact and broke left, and so in my mind now we're going north, right?
mhm,
And so eventually, like when we looped around with those guys and we linked up with the 82nd guys, and they're telling us that they're fighting an enemy vehicle, I'm like, that's not possible because east of their position is actually north, right? So in my mind, they're like, oh yeah, there's a vehicle right there. I'm like, that's north, that's out of bounds, like that's not possible. And so
mhm,
it turns basically my map in my mental map was like shifted 90 degrees, right? And
yeah,
so instead of facing north, we were actually facing east, and we ended up basically back where we were originally. And the
mhm,
map didn't fix itself in my brain until we got to where I had planted a balloon earlier, and I'm
mhm,
like, oh, now I understand where we are. Now I can orient myself to the ground. And what I should have done is I should have looked at the maps that we had prepared, not the ones that, not the physical printed one, because
mhm.
that doesn't help. But Zippy had given us a map like on an app on our phone,
Oh, yes.
right? And I realistically, I should have been smarter. I only did this later on. I should have opened up my phone, got, because I had it in my pocket, and just taken it out and looked at the map, and it would have fixed the orientation in my brain immediately. I'm like, okay, I understand what we're doing now.
Mhm.
That's the only even. Did that really impact our ability to conduct mission? No, because we were still going the right direction, accidentally, as it turns out. But the advantage at that field is if we had been going the wrong direction, we would have just hit the natural barrier of like the sheer cliff, and we'd be like, oh,
Mhm.
hang on, we need to fix and we need to reorient.
Yeah.
Didn't become an issue. So that I think is another learning for me. So I mean, my number one learning was around the radios. My number two was around sort of map orientation and figuring that out. Because other than that, like I think I was very diligent to always, whenever I'm using my physical map, I was always orienting. I mean, you may have noticed that. Like I'd always orient it to the ground, right? So I put it
Mhm.
on the ground and I would rotate the map until it was in the same orientation that we're looking at, so we
Mhm.
know where the reference and landmarks are. So that was point number two. But other than that, I mean, that was excellent. We ended up back on Kingman Slopes, back in the same defensive position that we were in before,
Yep.
and in exactly sort of the same situation, basically holding strong pointing until eventually getting overrun by well, an enemy player who was kind of solo, which is not supposed to happen, but whatever. And they got around and basically killed the whole squad. I killed him, and he claimed he shot me, although Joe, who was watching the whole thing, confirmed that he did not. I still called myself out, but he was out too.
Yeah.
And the whole squad at that point, section, I should say, wiped and made it back to the CP. And I think we didn't take much of a break at that point. I don't think.
No, at that point we kind of took just enough to where we were like, okay, like let's, take a quick knee, throw, drink some water, throw some new heat packs, in your
Yeah.
hands and stuff like that, and
And
we
I
went
went to
back
the
out pretty quickly.
yeah, I went back to the command tent to talk to Hagen,
Hmm.
and then after that, we ended up putting the night vision on, and we were
Yes.
starting to get into the night portion of things. So we don't really have to recap the whole event, but I think night vision is was a really interesting experience. I want to hear from you about it first. Like,
Yeah.
what was
Um.
the okay? Here's my question for you.
Sure.
What was the most unexpected thing about night vision that like you did not foresee this happening, or you didn't think that this was going to be something, but it turns out to
Wow.
be a reality?
Wow. I think for me it was. Well, I think there were two. I think there were two things with this. It was number one, how quickly I got confused when it came to figuring out who was friendly and who was not friendly.
Yeah.
Because we literally, like, we shook hands basically with an enemy patrol, and then we all point blanked each other because again, like they didn't have nods on. We just put ours on. You can't really tell. So I think it
Mhm.
was that moment of realization of holy crow, like we didn't really know what the enemy looked like before. Now we really don't.
Yeah.
But I think the second part for me that I realized really quickly was traversing with nods is not that easy. So,
Yeah.
what I ended up doing, or what I ended up realizing, is that because we had the monos, is that by having one up and one down, I could traverse. Especially because, like, when there were points where we actually had to patrol into the trees to get the nodes and stuff, it was significantly easier to traverse because I was
Mhm.
like, yeah, I'm going to put these on and they're going to stay on. And then there were moments where I was like, but wait a second. Oh, wow, there's a bush right here. And I didn't realize that because you get so tunnel vision, I found with the nods.
Yeah.
So for me, I really did see a benefit of having one tube flipped up to traverse, especially while traveling through the trees and stuff.
Yeah, because the vegetation was not Newfoundland dense, but there were some spotty areas where it
Oh yeah.
was pretty dense. I think one of the biggest things for me is that you see night vision in video games. I mean, we've all played Arma and COD and all this kind of stuff. We see how night vision is depicted in like films and movies and TV and stuff like that. And the biggest thing for me was that you're the only thing that is in focus is like the distance that you focus to in terms of your engagement. So,
Mhm.
we focused out to, maybe 100 meters or whatever, but everything that's up close to your face basically is not in focus. It's blurry.
Yeah.
That's because of how the aperture works in these night vision devices, and I don't know the specifics of it, but basically you can't really make out your hands. You can't look at your magazine and really tell if, like, so like on the EPM ones you can see like the springs, and you can
Mm.
see how tight they are, how not tight they are, which tells you, like, gives you a vague idea of how, can't tell. It's all blurry, right? You look down at your feet, you can't, they're blurry. You're
Yeah.
looking at branches in front of you, they're blurry. You also very quickly lose sense of how, it's not that you don't have depth perception, but you don't necessarily know exactly how close some things are. And
Mm.
that I found was really took a little bit of getting used to. For some reason though, your red dot, right? No problem,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So you can it's in focus, it's crisp. I asked Colin about that, and I was like, but my red dot's in focus. How does that work? And he's like, I don't know, physics. I was like, okay, fair enough, right? But like that's like that's good. And my red dot was pretty much on, so I was still quite capable of hitting guys, but I couldn't see my BBs. That's
Hmm.
another thing. I was like, oh well, your BBs are white. Surely, right? You will be able to. Nope, right?
Nah.
You can't see that. Um, my first time using an IR laser. When I had seen an IR laser in at Iron Horse, when we were playing and stuff, and like it was like a solid beam, right? But the IR laser that I had was like a laser pointer, so it's not a
Mm.
beam; it's just a dot. So okay, so sometimes you have to look for that, right? It's super bright, so that's kind of cool. But at the same time, like if you're not accustomed to looking for it, and if it's not sighted in with your BBs, then is that going to work? That was a very like that whole experience of not being like having blurriness and whatnot was unexpected for me. I did not know that that was going to be a thing.
Hmm.
But still really cool.
Oh my gosh! I mean, like again, like you talk about one of the coolest things we've ever got to do. I
Yeah,
mean, especially for me. I mean that might like really put its way to like the top of the airsoft list of just like one of the coolest things I got to do while playing sport. Right,
yeah,
like playing at our local field for a couple hours in the middle of the daytime, packing up, going home, and then boom, like you're playing with nods. Like
yeah.
it's a different world.
Yeah, and there was so much available light as well. So it was cloud
Yeah.
cover, but there were so many people with flashlights, so many vehicles with like actual spotlights and stuff that it was really, really easy to get available light to see. So we didn't really have any issues with it being too dark. But you definitely forget that not everybody can see. I don't know, like you mentioned getting sucked in tunnel vision. I definitely felt that.
Yeah.
Like you can just you see through your eye, like through your binos, and you forget there's an entire world outside of that for sure,
Oh
for
yeah.
sure. Or like
100%.
having to be like sort of. I remember like when we were walking the first patrol, first sortie that we did, just walking down the road, and some of the guys were like, "Do you want to wait up?" And I was like, "Oh yeah, right. These guys can't actually see where we're going." And so like Zippy ended up putting his hand on my shoulder so we could move forward. I was like, "Yeah, I gotta remember to do that." Because these guys like where we are right now there is no light, they can't see, they need
Hmm.
to move along with me, right?
Yeah, and that's the thing about it. I mean, like that's just back to like communication, right? And kind of people just kind of give you that quick reminder of like, hey, you can see, I can't.
Yeah, yeah. There's a lot of thermals floating around this event too. We talked
Oh
about that with the guys. Like, I mean, that's also kind of crazy. um but yeah, it was, you know, I was glad that our gear could just accept the nods. We mentioned at the start, like the helmets, we were able to put the NVG bracket in, and everything clicked in, everything was fine. um Thanks to Carlo from Ontario who lent us the nods. He was an absolute legend. But like it was the nods and the mount, like so like a Wilcox mount basically, and
hmm.
then the counterweights and the retention. Like he had all of it there for us, so
Yeah.
that made it basically just turnkey. It's like you slap the counterweights in the pouch. It had the retention cord, so velcro that somewhere to your helmet, which came in handy for you once because it fell off your
I also
helmet.
literally just forgot that my helmet has the retention cords, and I
Yeah,
just didn't use them. But yeah, like literally the nods came literally off my helmet, so the retention, yeah, saved me hugely.
yeah. And yeah, so I think ultimately like that is something, again, if you're going to an event and you have the opportunity to rent night vision, it's pricey, obviously. Like we paid $300 each for the
Hmm.
bino rental. And we actually didn't use it all night, and he ended up refunding us some money, which is so cool. He didn't have to do that, but like what a legend.
Yeah.
But that is money well spent. And it's money well spent because it's an experience that you will, if you're anything like us, like you're not going to get a chance to do that very often or maybe ever again.
Hmm.
Like maybe you travel for airsoft but it's all daytime games or whatever, or you go to an event and there's no rentals available. So if you have the opportunity, and of course you have the money, I highly, highly recommend checking it out. I think we talked about it a little bit with one of the guys from the Rust4 team with Chef, and he was saying, you have companies like Op4 Night Solutions. They will give players an experience of night vision because once you experience it, I've given this analogy before, but it's like when you go scuba diving for the first time and you breathe underwater, right? You're experiencing something that you're not supposed to be able to do, right?
Yeah.
And that's it's pretty magical, right? It's definitely something that is worth it. And being able to do that in the context of an airsoft game where now not only are you experiencing that, but you also have to do work. right? Not work like we're playing, but like you're expected to do stuff now. So you're going out, you're wearing knots, and it's like, all right, go find this thing, land nav, go fight this squad, go like do all this kind of stuff,
Hmm.
especially at that time of night too, where everything was starting to get like frozen and like crazy.
Yeah.
It was a bit of a wild experience.
And the reality is too is that I mean we did 5 hours in the dark because it was getting it's this time of year where it gets dark early.
Yeah.
And I looked at it and I'm like, gosh, like this event to me would have probably been nowhere near as enjoyable if I didn't have had the nods. Because we got dark so early. Like
Yeah.
if it didn't get dark till like, 9 or 10 o'clock, like it does, peak summertime, and then, we only needed the nods for a few hours. Cool, like maybe I could have survived without them. But playing in the fall where it's dark so early, and shout out to our guys who played without them because I would have I think I know I would have had a really miserable time if I didn't have them.
Well, I think it's easy to say that in retrospect, but having not experienced them,
Wow.
right? You don't know what you would have missed, right? I guess is
Yeah.
the fact, right? And I think knowing that we were renting them, we
Yeah.
were able to prepare in consequence. I think if you knew that you weren't getting them, you likely would have prepared differently. I mean, we might not have selected that game to begin with, but beside the
Wow.
point, like you would have gotten one of the like you know the retina burners 9000 or whatever firing like 15,000 lumen or whatever, but
Yeah.
like you would have figured it out. I think
Oh yeah.
yeah, like the guys who ran with us, I mean the feedback from them is they still had a good time
Mm.
despite not being able to see the way we were able to see. But yeah,
That's
it
fair.
was really cool. And I mean it was crazy to know just how many people had access to night vision at this event on both sides. Like it's just wild. That's
Yeah.
a lot of money tied up in night vision equipment in
Oh
Ontario. It's
man. Like
crazy.
you think about how much money was on that field that day, like
Yeah, like if you consider like the average bino setup in Canada is like anywhere from like $8,000 or like $8 to $10,000, and you have conservatively you had 100 players at this event with night vision, right? I mean, it's like $800,000 of like equipment on the field. Like that's crazy. Like that getting close to $1 million, and that's just night vision.
I was like, that's
That's
just
not talking about
like,
the thermals, right? Like you're
yeah,
packing the $1 million easy, right?
or the
So
vehicles and yeah.
well, the vehicles, yeah, and the vehicles, I think, as a sort of a last point, the vehicles were really interesting. I think I think there was kind of two games going on. There was the vehicles
Mm.
versus vehicles kind of situation, and people who had AT and people like whatever, and then there's everybody else. So it was really cool for us in our last sortie to get to roll with a vehicle. Like like being able to be like, hey, can you swing your turret over to like 10 o'clock, and then they swing the turret
Oh
over, and it's just
man.
like that was cool. And the fact that they're basically invulnerable to small arms fire because they're supposed to be quote unquote tanks, right? So they're just like being able to put fire down. That was pretty cool. Also having to consider like be careful not getting run over by a vehicle on the field was not something I had considered before, but certainly like when we're right next to a vehicle, I'm like if this guy backs up, I'm getting smushed, so I should probably move. Like
Yeah.
that was interesting, but yeah, like definitely I know you were very gung-ho on we need a vehicle now, right?
Oh my gosh, I am on the vehicle gang right now. I don't know, like I just think it was that like that last patrol we did. Um, while it might not actually, I know I feel like from a objective standpoint, the last patrol we did might have been our most effective patrol because like we flipped two nodes, we traveled as a team, we had a Vic,
Mhm.
like just traveling behind the Vic and like what you said, hey, can you rotate your turret, you know, 90 degrees left and just and then like can you light that area up for us? Like it was such a freaking cool experience and I am 100% on the we need a vehicle gang. Do we randomly have at minimum, 15 grand to just drop
Yeah,
on
no.
a wannabe vehicle? No. Do I wish we did? Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
If I win the lottery tomorrow, Lotto Max 70 million, I'm buying a Vic just for Airsoft. I want to clarify that.
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah. That yeah, it's again I think the vehicles and night vision and stuff like that and pyro as well. Like
Yeah.
it's a good example of you kind of don't know what you are missing out on until
Hmm.
you try those things. But on the flip side, you can very easily assume that those things are things that they aren't until you see them in action, right? And the vehicles was super super cool, but it wasn't exactly what I thought it was going to be either. I think the idea of like in my mind, like you have a lot more of this like um combat or joint combat arms type situation. And what you end up with actually at this event is more like vehicles do their own thing and infantry kind of does their own thing.
Yeah.
And so, is it exactly what I had in my mind? No. Is it really cool? Definitely. Like, so you don't know what it is until you see. Same thing with night vision, right? I in my
Hmm.
mind was like, oh, this is just this like super like OP power, and then you put it on, you're like, okay, it's a lot of things and it's really cool, but like you can't see color, right? You don't know if that's a dead
Hmm.
light or that's something else, right? You like we were trying to find the enemy balloons and like, oh, it's the red balloon right there, and everyone on in our section they could see this red balloon. I could not because night vision doesn't show color,
Yeah.
and so it's not until I like put my nose to the side and looked, and I was like, oh, I can see it now. I know what that is. So stuff like that. That once you experience it, you can make a decision about is this something that we want, is it something that I want to keep doing? Like, is it fun? Do I think it'd be fun in our community? All this kind of stuff. And the best way to do that is to experience it for yourself, if you can, if
Hmm.
you're able to, and then bring back the best parts of it to your community. And like, we might not be in budget to get a vehicle this year, and you know what? Maybe next year is not in the cards either. But at some point, you might be staring down that opportunity, being like, we could do something with that, and then you'll have
Yeah.
the knowledge to say, like, is it really worth it?
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
And I mean, a
So
lot of that just comes from like, I mean, pure community size as well, right? I
yeah,
mean, well, if we have an event, if we are pulling off events with 80, 100 people, yeah, okay, cool, that makes sense. We're pulling off events with 30 and 40, probably not, right?
yeah, exactly. But I mean, at the same time, like we could go back and be like, okay, well, we know that these vehicles are just normal vehicles. Like I think one of the
Yeah.
technicals that was on our side, he had a turret for sure, but I'm pretty sure it was just a Hyundai Santa Fe, right? Like
Yeah.
it's not some sort of up armored vehicle, or like one of the vehicles was like a Humvee or something, and it looked really cool. But like the rest of them are just normal cars. So it's like, would you take your Ford Bronco out to an airsoft event and expect like BBs to actually do damage to it? No, that's not realistically going to happen, right?
Mm.
So I'm not suggesting that you should do that. But you know what? Like there comes a position where it's like, okay, well, we've this person has a vehicle, they're getting a new one, but this one's not worth anything. So maybe they just use that for airsoft. That's a very realistic scenario that could come up, right?
Absolutely.
Because it's like, what's a BB gonna do to this like jalopy basically, right? Like I think about my vehicle. My vehicle's like is a Prius, so it's not like it would be ideal, but like I plan to drive that into the ground. At some point, it will have like negative value, right? Like could that be kept enough to make an airsoft vehicle? Maybe not my Prius in particular, but that could be a truck, right? You could drive a like an old Tacoma into the ground, and then what? Okay, well it drives. I'm not gonna. It's not really like daily drive worthy, but it could be an airsoft vehicle. Cool, right? Maybe
Yeah.
that's a starting place. So in any event, I think yeah, definitely a cool experience. Not a
Hmm.
vehicle is not a priority certainly for us. Um, but I'm glad we got to experience that and take away some good lessons about what we want to do differently with our kits and things that we need to think about the next time we do something like this, because there will be a next time.
Oh,
Um,
absolutely. And I mean, like,
yeah,
we have a big, we have a big season coming up in Newfoundland next year. And
yeah,
I know everyone's already getting hyped. We got a lot of work that's already being put into it. And, obviously, like our biggest event next year, we're not going to be playing. Me and you are going to be running it, but there will be other events and there were, stuff like that. So there's definitely opportunity. But yeah, it's going to be really cool just to see, what, how our community grows and what things from this that we can implement. Like, I think it's safe to say, just for example, like the pyro or the tag-ins alone, I think it's safe to say we already know that that's one, like after experiencing it, we can both vouch for those and be like, yeah, 100%, we can permit them at our events here now after getting to experience it.
yeah, exactly right. And same thing with night vision. Like before this event, I never would have considered really like, okay,
Mm.
do we do a night game? And would we want to do that? We would want to do a night portion if not having night vision. Well, as it turns out, that's totally feasible, right? But
Yeah.
on the other side, if we can attract people to come to the event who have night vision, then we know sort of how that changes the dynamic, and that could be fun too. So I'm really
Yeah.
hoping. I know that people are going to travel to this event next year, so I'm hoping we attract some people who were at Red Road. I mean, it was a really good opportunity for us to connect with, Connor and Battle Dwarf to talk to the Rust 4 guys on the podcast, the Flamingo guys, and other people too who might be willing to make the trip down for something so unique. So
Mhm.
yeah, it was definitely one for the books. Like, we were out there.
Oh man,
We were out there.
we were out there. We came, we saw, we conquered. So I mean,
Well, we kind of got our ass kicked too, because
we
by
did.
the end of the night, we were like, okay, this by
Yeah.
10:15, we're like, okay, this is we've gotten everything we need to out of this event, and we've got 4 frozen solid guns and an injured player. I mean, maybe it's time for us to pack it in.
Yeah,
But
absolutely.
no regrets. I would 100% do it again, even knowing what I know now. I think I would still go ahead and do that. So,
I agree
but yeah,
wholeheartedly,
yeah,
and I mean, like you said, man, it was just nice to meet the connections and stuff. And shout out to the Flamingo boys who hooked me up afterwards and sent me a little gift in the mail. So that was
nice,
awesome. So
yeah. Well, Kirby, thanks for coming on to sort of reminisce about this. I mean, it's been a few weeks
yeah,
now, but it's. I hope you guys listening enjoyed this. Hopefully, you take something away from it. There's a lot to unpack in some of the stuff we were talking about, but hopefully, you get a lesson. And yeah, and apologies for the gap in podcast last week, but hopefully, we should have a few more before the holiday seasons hit. And yeah, so thank you so much for listening. And that's all we've got for you this week. We'll talk to you next week. Take care.